Allahu, 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 Allah, Allah.
When we talk about the Fiqh of Salah, the topic of Salah, one might ask this question: why are we doing this topic? This is the most common topic in the universe. Do we really need to discuss this again and again? It's a topic beaten till death, right? What's the intent behind it? Well, that might be true for an individual person. One person may have studied this topic in many ways. But we as a community, and from my understanding, I've been here with this masjid for about 11, 12 years. I've been attending this masjid here. From my understanding, and the uncles who have been to the masjid, you uncle for example, and you uncle as well, if you can confirm for me, we've never had a Fiqh of Salah sessions here, right, in detail, right? So that's the first thing. We're intending to do it as a first off thing here, with two intentions in mind. Number one, if you have covered this topic before in your personal studies or whatever, it'll be a review inshallah ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Right? If you believe, you've done this stuff before, you will benefit from it because you're a believer anyways. So there's no problem in repeating some things, some misconceptions can be clarified, some gaps can be filled inshallah ta'ala. For those people who haven't studied this topic, like a proper study through it, you've just learned it from our parents or the messages we were brought up in, this is very beneficial inshallah ta'ala. We will discuss all the sides. We will not only discuss the issues in the books of fiqh of 1,000 years ago, we will discuss contemporary matters as well. And that's what I want to emphasize is inshallah ta'ala we will put a lot of focus on things that are very relevant to our situations. Right? For example, praying in the masjid, praying in winter time nowadays, for example. All contemporary issues inshallah ta'ala we will discuss to a degree inshallah ta'ala. Right? So make it very, very relevant for people here, and you will go home inshallah ta'ala with a lot of benefit. The other thing we need to keep in mind, we're conducting these sessions with one main objective in mind. The way we're conducting is by presenting all the sides, right? On a particular issue, we're mentioning the opinions of the four madh'hab, for example. Might be 3 opinions, might be 2 opinions, for the sake of example. The intent is to develop tolerance. The intent is to develop, openness, and a general knowledge that there are matters in which there is not one single opinion, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, right? It's not problematic in general when we discuss inshallah ta'ala today, but the objective is to have that flexibility, openness in our mind, and to facilitate that discussion forward inshallah ta'ala. Now tonight's session we will discuss the first question we need to answer. We have 3 questions, I believe, 3 questions that I will inshallah ta'ala answer today. Question number 1 is, why are there differences of fiqh? Differences of opinion in fiqh. Right? You might see a person standing next to you, maybe you've seen in the salah tonight. That person standing next to you is putting his hands on the chest. Person next to you is putting his hands below the navel. Right? Are they wrong? Are they right? Why doesn't everyone pray in just one way? Or why doesn't everyone fast in just one way? Or why do we need to look at the moon sighting issue? Like, why do the fiqh differences exist? This is a very natural question a person might have. Right? Before we answer this question, let's define what fiqh actually means, just to have an understanding. Right? They say fiqh is the knowledge of practical shari'i rulings that are derived from their detailed evidences. Sounds very... I don't understand it personally. If you just think of it that way, there's no meaning to it. Right? We'll discuss each portion of it inshallah ta'ala. It is the knowledge of practical shari'i rulings that are derived from its evidences. Knowledge of practical rulings, number 1, practical shari'i rulings, derived from its evidences. That's a summary of what fiqh means in our context. Right? So when we say it is the knowledge of practical rulings, shari'i rulings derived from evidences, what do we mean? By saying practical, we don't talk about aqeedah here. Practical means physical. We do, we give, we interact with people. That's what practical here means. Right? In our case, salah is super practical, right? Physically we're doing it and all those things. That's the thing, number 1. Number 2, when we say evidences, what are the evidences we're talking about here? We're talking about the Quran and the Sunnah, and those evidences that are derived from these things. Right? The Quran, the Sunnah being the primary sources, and anything that is derived from these two big things in mind. So, practical Sharia rulings derived from these sources. From these sources. So that's what fiqh basically means. For example, how many rak'at should I pray for dhuhr? Right? Everyone knows it's 4. Right? But how do we know that? We see it from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, from the Hadith, for example. Right? Or, for example, what are the timings for prayers? How do we know when to pray Fajr? How do we know when to pray Maghrib? Who said Maghrib is to be prayed at sunset time? Right, let me ask you guys a question. Okay. How do we know that in zakah we have to pay 2.5%? This is a question for people actually. You may answer if you like to. It's in the Quran to pay 2.5%?
In Sunnah as well.
But you can say that to anything and everyone will be happy. We're saying, how do you know it's 2.5%, not 3.5% and not 12%? Do you know, brother?
I was just going to say, based on some of the stories from the Sirah or even the Hadith, in terms of what it was before to what's equivalent to now.
No, my question is this. How do we know that we have to pay 2.5%? Very precise percentage, right? It's not 2.5, 2.7, it's not 3.5, it's 2.5. Do we just come up from this? You shouldn't answer. And you shouldn't answer. So, do you have an answer? Do you have an idea?
Is it from Rasulullah's instructions to when the delegates that accepted Islam? So he probably instructed them, and I don't know if it's
Good start.
so when they accepted Islam, they were told to pray and they were told to give zakah and fast.
Yeah.
And I believe he must have told them specifically how much zakah to give. So back then they used to work in terms of goods, right? It
Okay.
wasn't actually in terms of money. So it wasn't a percentage, was it? I guess it would have been quintals of wheat type of thing.
But what about gold and silver, which was the currency at that time? So you have it's a good start. But when we look at the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ is telling the delegation that you've got to do A, B, C, D, we generally don't find details mentioned in those things, especially for zakah. Because he used to send people to collect zakah or teach zakah. It's the other way around, right? So I'll give you an answer just to cut this whole thing short. There's a specific hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ, the meaning of it, he says, from every 40 some unit, I forgot what the unit is, you have to give one share of that. And 1/40 is 2.5%. 1/40 is 2.5%. Right? That's how we get it. It's that simple, but there's a specific narration about it. Right? It's not like some just person got up one day and he just made that stuff up. Right? So that's the idea of deriving a particular ruling from the thing. This makes it look very simplistic. It's more complicated than that. But that's just generally the idea. Right? Where to place your hands in salah, how to do the sajda, what is sajda sahw, the most important topic in the world, right? In salah time, those things. So these are the things, inshallah ta'ala, we'll be discussing in our series. Now the question comes, why can we not just follow the sunnah and have no differences amongst us? Right? Right? If you follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, then we shouldn't have differences amongst us. Is that correct? Right? Is that correct?
Yes, of course.
This question is so wrong, by the way. I phrase it in that way to cause trouble in the mind. The question is wrong, in a way, but it's vague, right? One answer is yes. If you follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we shouldn't have problematic situations. But we see in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, the second answer to this question is this, that we see in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, companions in his presence ﷺ, came up with conclusions on fiqh matters that were kind of opposing or at least differing. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ, in some of those cases, entertained those differences. He allowed them to exist in a healthy fashion. But it is important to understand, in principle, Islam does not encourage differences for the sake of differences. That is not encouraged in Islam. Right? We can't just say Islam encourages to be different, then we can do whatever we want. We've got plenty of ayat in the Quran and a million hadith that tell us not to be people who differ with each other for the sake of differences. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for example, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ وَاصْبِرُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Right? What does the ayah very explicitly says? Obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا, and don't quarrel with one another. Don't fight, don't argue with one another. فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ, meaning your conclusion will not be positive, you will be in a difficult situation, you will be in loss. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا وَاخْتَلَفُوا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. And don't be like those people who differed amongst one another after the guidance came to them. So such ayat set a precedence that differences, just for the sake of differences, is not what is encouraged in Islam. This is not what is encouraged in Islam. Then the question comes, why do we have differences? If it's not encouraged, why do we have it? Right? Then we need to understand these ayat in the light of the practice of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. If you just take this ayah by itself, it seems like any difference, as minuscule as putting the hands, is problematic. The literal reading indicates it's very problematic. Don't differ. When the ayat and hadith come to you, don't differ. But that is not the right understanding. When we look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, we'll give some examples inshaAllah ta'ala, and the companions as well, in his presence and his after his death ﷺ. We see there are many cases in which companions came up to different conclusions on one matter. But did they come up with those conclusions because they want to differ? Just for the sake of, I want to be different from you? And the answer is no. So let's give you one example. The most famous example that is quoted by the scholars in this issue is the story of praying Asr after the Battle of Khandaq in the place of Bani Qurayza. When the Battle of Khandaq ended in the 5th year of Hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ comes back to Medina, or he's on his way to Medina. The idea is the battle has ended, and he's about to take off his armor when Jibreel alayhi salam comes to him and he says, do not take off your armor. The angels amongst us haven't done that as either. You should go and deal with the situation of Bani Qurayza. If you want to look up to this issue, you can read the Seerah books. The Prophet ﷺ knows that the situation is very difficult and important. He tells his companion, this hadith in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. He says, لا يصلين أحد أو لا يصلين أحدكم العصر إلا في بني قريظة. That none of you should pray Asr except when you reach Bani Qurayza's place. Right? This is what the Prophet ﷺ said. The most apparent reading of the text. The companions, when they heard the Prophet ﷺ, they divided into two groups. Group number one, they said the Prophet ﷺ told us, do not pray Asr, and that was the time for Asr, or the time was coming close. And the trip to that Bani Qurayza place would have delayed the Salah perhaps to the extent of Maghrib, or at least delayed it very much. Right? What actually happened? One group of companions said, the Prophet ﷺ told us to not pray Asr except there. We will do exactly what he told us. Even if Asr ends, Maghrib time comes, we will pray our Asr when we reach the area of Bani Qurayza. The second group of companions, they said, the Prophet ﷺ right now is telling us to rush and hurry up. This doesn't mean he's not telling us to pray on time. It's just one of his ways to encourage us to rush. But in the meantime, if we pray Asr on the way, it should be the case. We should do that. But we should rush to Bani Qurayza. Two different understandings, right? Two totally different understandings. Contradictory understandings, right? Yes? This happened to groups of companions. They did what they did. Afterwards, this was told to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ, according to this narration, did not say, this group you're wrong, that group you're wrong, or how dare you differ, I'm alive, and you differ on these issues. The Prophet ﷺ, according to one narration, gave more strength to the group of people who prayed Asr in its appropriate time, but they rushed. Right? They took the understanding that the Prophet ﷺ is telling us to rush, not literally to pray there. Right? So this happened in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? So when you look at this hadith, and we look at the ayat that talk about don't differ, we see a different picture altogether. Right? So we need to take everything together and paint that picture in one way. Not just look at this hadith, put the ayat on the side, or take the ayat and put the hadith on the side. There's another example I'd like to share with you guys, inshallah ta'ala. Some scholars have talked about the narration's authenticity, but let's assume it's authentic. Many scholars say it's authentic. There's a narration in which two men, they went out for traveling purposes, and they did not have water with them. Okay, so the time for Salah came, and they did tayammum. Both companions did tayammum. Okay? Once they done tayammum, both of them, after they've done the tayammum, they pray the salah, they find water afterwards. So one companion, he does wudu and he prays again. The other companion said, I've done tayammum, I've prayed, just done my job. Then the Prophet ﷺ was told about this. But these two men came to the Prophet ﷺ and they told him about this. The Prophet ﷺ told to the person who didn't repeat, who just did the tayammum and prayed, he said, أَصَبْتَ السُّنَّةِ وَأَجْزَأَتْكَ صَلَاتُكَ, that you have achieved the sunnah and your salah is fulfilled. Meaning the one who did tayammum and prayed even though he found the water afterwards. To the other one, the Prophet ﷺ reportedly said, for you have 2 ajrs, double the reward. Right? In this narration we also find, assuming it's authentic inshallah, that the Prophet ﷺ took the situation of 2 opposing companions, did not attack them, did not do anything, because both of these companions were intending, and these are the 2 key things we need to keep in mind in ikhtilaf. They're intending to seek what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ. They're not intending to differ because I am special or he's this or he's that. That's not the intention, right? And number 2, they did their due diligence. Both of them knew tayammum. Both of them knew the importance of finding water. They knew what they were doing. They had the knowledge and their intention was sincere. And these are people who have the knowledge, right? And we as people who would follow the people of knowledge should have that attitude as well. So keeping these things in mind, this is very, very basic surface level idea, but keeping these things in mind, we can easily conclude and say that if the ikhtilaf happens based on these principles in general, in fiqh, it should be fine. It should be acceptable. But this ikhtilaf is not me and you. This is the time of the companions and the salaf. If they differ on these things, then we can't come today and say this is the right thing and you're wrong. That attitude is not conducive to healthy environments and inclusive masajid. Right? Okay. Now going to the discussion of why differences exist, the question then comes, okay, ikhtilaf existed in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but now why did it exist? What's the reason behind it? Right? And there are many reasons behind it. Inshallah ta'ala, I'll cover 3 reasons in very summarized fashion. Each reason can take 50 minutes of discussion, at least. Right? One of the reasons why there's ikhtilaf that exists is because certain meanings, certain words of the ayah, of the hadith, can have multiple meanings. Multiple meanings. The Arabic language allows for certain words to have multiple meanings. Oftentimes, contradictory meanings. An example I'll give you inshallah ta'ala. The very famous issue in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوء. Okay? I will not go in depth, but I'll just give an idea. For a woman who has been divorced, how long is her iddah period? Rephrase. For the woman who is divorced, how long is her iddah duration? The companions differed over this issue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and those women who are divorced, they should wait ثلاثة قروء, 3 quru, right? 3 cycles. The question is, what does a cycle mean here? The scholars have differed on exact opposite things. Because the Arabic language allows for that. The word quru, the qar is the singular, it can mean the time of the period, literally the period, the women's cycle, when she is in the process of the bleeding and all those things. Or it could mean the opposite of that, the time between one cycle and the other, the period time, and there's nothing happening. Right? Arabic language in this particular word allows for both meanings. And we find Aisha radiallahu anha, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, Zayd bin Thabit. These are companions, famous, big companions. They held the opinion that this means the time of purity. She's got to wait 3 cycles of purity. Whatever the conclusion on the issue, the idea is that's what they held the opinion. You find Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman and Ali radiallahu anhum, Khulafa Rashidin, they held the opinion this is the time for the hayd itself. Two different opinions. Why is that the case? Because their understanding of the Arabic language allowed them to differ on these issues. And therefore we see the difference among the madh'hab as well. Right? And the companions differed, but they didn't fight. That's the thing. That's the key point here. Right? This is an example of those things. Just for the sake of reference, if someone wants to know. Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, they hold the opinion is the Tuhur. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala holds the opinion is the Hayd period. Right? That's irrelevant. So this is one example of the duration of iddah, because the differing of the understanding of the word, because of the language. We may not appreciate it because we're not native speakers of Arabic of that time. Right? For us, many times we're based on translation. Right? So this is one example. The second reason why there might be differences of opinion is because of narration of the hadith. In this case, we'll talk about two particular cases here. You see, the hadith were compiled in an organized fashion some time after the Prophet ﷺ. To an extent, it was compiled in his life, ﷺ, in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. To an extent, it was compiled by some of the companions. Right? You have Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiallahu anhuma. You have Ali radiallahu anhu. In one narration, he has a sahifa in which he has a hadith. There's an al-adab al-mufrad. And many other narrations. You find companions writing it down. Right? So someone comes out and say to you, hadith recorded 400 years later, that is absolutely categorically wrong. Right? But an organized compilation happened way after the Prophet ﷺ. Right? Some say Imam al-Zuhri, some say Imam Malik, some say other people. The idea is it happened after 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. An organized collection as a book form. Right? So when we look at the companions, not every companion knows every hadith. Like, very logical, right? You met the Prophet ﷺ, you know this thing, but he doesn't. Right? Just because you met him. It's not that he attended the halaqah and he read the book. No, but you attended. Maybe you asked the Prophet ﷺ a question. He told you something. When he tells you something in our language is a hadith. Yes? Right? In their language is just a conversation with the Prophet ﷺ. Right? But that question wasn't asked by a different companion. Right? And hence he doesn't know the answer. When he encounters that situation, he may do ijtihad. And you will do what? You'll follow the hadith. And hence we have an ikhtilaf. Right? Very simple, very basic. The example of that is very, very beautiful example. I was discussing this example with my mother last night. Actually in the morning today, I think. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the faqih, the muhaddith, the zahid of the companions. One of the greatest scholar of hadith of the companions. On an issue, if a person wakes up in the state of janaba, major impurity, we won't go in details there, no time. Can he fast or not? Right? If a person wakes up in janaba, can he fast or not? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, his fatwa was, he cannot fast. Okay? So he's sitting in the masjid, he gave that fatwa. He gave that fatwa, a different tabi'i comes, he says, you know what, Abu Hurairah, listen. I heard Salama and Aisha radiallahu anhuma, al-Mu'mineen, right, the two of them, then narrating a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says otherwise. Then Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, what does he say? He said, no, I know better than that. Absolutely not. This is Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu we're talking about here, right? He said, these in this issue, okay, really? Is that the case? They know better than I do. And he changed his fatwa. Because he did not know the hadith. Right? This is a very simple example. Right? So that's an example of that case. The other case, now the other thing in terms of hadith, in sometimes, some of the companions, and this also descends down to the imams, would argue that this hadith is authentic and some would say it's not. Even in the hadith literature, not everyone agrees that one hadith is authentic. With the exception, general exception, Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. With that general exception, no one agrees on every single hadith. Imam Ahmad might say is authentic. Imam Bukhari might say it's not. For example, for the sake of an example, right? For reasons that are beyond our minds right now. Okay? Even in the companions we find such situation. Right? Abu Musa radiallahu anhu, this is narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. He narrates Abu Musa radiallahu anhu came to us once in a very worried and concerned state. And we asked him, what's the matter with you? He said, I went to Umar radiallahu anhu, this is in his khilafah. He said, I went to Umar radiallahu anhu's house and knocked on the door 3 times. He didn't respond. I decided to leave. Okay? And when I was leaving, he opened the door. He happened to open the door at that time. And he saw me leaving. He said, how come you're leaving? He said, listen, I know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, such and such thing, knock 3 times. You know the narration, right? Everyone has the idea of the concept, right? So Umar radiallahu anhu says, listen, either you bring a witness or I don't agree with your hadith. Right? Vetting of hadith was done in the life of the companions. It's not something later on. Like when someone comes to you and says to you, hadith came 400 years after, Imam Bukhari woke up one day and he said this is authentic. That's not the case. Major companions disagreed with one another and they came up to a conclusion later on. Right? So Umar radiallahu anhu says to Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu that either you bring a proof or then we will declare you, this is my words now, we declare you as a person who's not speaking the truth. So Abu Sa'id radiallahu anhu came to Abu Musa in this gathering and he was worried. And when he comes to the gathering, he mentioned the situation. And we find Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu says, listen, I was witness to this hadith. Right? So Umar radiallahu anhu thought that was not authentic. Abu Musa thought it was authentic. Or Abu Sa'id. You're confused. Abu Sa'id radiallahu anhu thought it was authentic. And then Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu added to the authentication. This is the time of the companions. I'm not giving examples from later on because they will become very boring. Let's talk about the companions. The real time there, right? So that's the idea. In a hadith, some companions differed, or they didn't know, or some imams didn't wish the hadith to them, or they thought it's weak, and they come up with different conclusions. Okay? The third reason of ikhtilaf that might exist is because that there may not be any text on that issue. Right? An issue that comes up after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, upon which regarding which there's no ayah, regarding which there's no hadith. How does a companion give his fatwa on that issue? Or how do our scholars give fatwa on that issue? Ijtihad, someone said that, right? The idea is what ijtihad is, and that's a different story. But the idea is, if someone does ijtihad on things that didn't exist in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you are asking for scholars to disagree. There is bound to be a difference of opinion, almost always. Because that issue is not clear cut. If the issue is not clear cut in the Quran or the Sunnah, then there will be instances in which the Sahaba or the scholars afterwards disagree with those issues. I'll give you an example again. We're talking about all the ikhtilafat among the time of the Prophets, of the companions, radiallahu anhu. When someone's father dies, for example, someone's father dies, no, sorry, that's the wrong question. When someone passes away, and he has a father and he has his siblings. X passed away, he has father and he has siblings. Who inherits from that? The answer is the father inherits, not the siblings. Right? Someone passed away, he has a father and he has siblings. Is the issue clear to everyone? Someone passes away, he has father and he has 2 brothers. Let's make it easier. Father and 2 brothers. When this guy passes away, who inherits from him? The father and father. Because when the father is alive, the siblings don't get anything. Okay? This is something we know from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This is something we know from the Quran, in fact. Let's add a twist to the situation. What if this person who passes away, he doesn't have a father, he has a grandfather. His grandfather is alive and his siblings are alive. Right? This person passes away. I'm talking about generation here, right? So it's clear. This person passes away. The father is not existent. He has passed away. The grandfather is alive and the siblings are alive. Same level, siblings, grandfather. Hierarchy here, right? Who inherits in this case? this is an issue that was not directly dealt by the Prophet ﷺ. So when it came to the companions, they came up with two different opinions, because this issue didn't exist in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? So we have Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Aisha radiallahu anha, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, and Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. I should just say radiallahu anhu at the end. Anyways, these companions, they gave the fatwa that the grandfather should inherit, because the grandfather is like the father. Okay? On the other hand, we have Umar radiallahu anhu, we have Ali radiallahu anhu, Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, who said that it's not just the grandfather who will share, the grandfather and siblings will have some sort of share in inheritance. Now the question I ask you, why did they differ? Is because there's no clear-cut hadith, there's no clear-cut ayah on this context. And every companion who is eligible for giving a fatwa did his own ijtihad on this matter. Right? So that's why there's a difference. There's a difference of opinion. So if you let's talk about nowadays situations. Many situations, I'll give an example with no conclusion to it. For example, Bitcoin, for the sake of argument, right? Bitcoin, the issue of Bitcoin. It was very big a couple of years ago. Did the Bitcoin exist in the time of the Prophet ﷺ? Did not. Right? Not even close. It's very possible that you might hear a sheikh saying Bitcoin is permissible, or cryptocurrency, let's make it even more general. That's permissible, and the other sheikh saying it's not permissible. Because of their own ijtihad on a matter that didn't exist explicitly in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? So we need to be cognizant of these things. Right? It helps us facilitate our mind, basically. It gives some mental ease in these points. Right? So these are some of the very many reasons that why ikhtilaf exists. Right? Now the second question is, if this ikhtilaf exists, how do we study fiqh then? Right? So many things are happening. Now before I even answer this question, we need to realize here, we're talking about ikhtilaf in fiqh, principled ikhtilaf. A person who's knowledgeable, who's trustworthy, who's intending to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and who's using the correct means that we have taken, the evidences, the sources that exist. Those people differ, not us. Those people differ. In the issues of fiqh is what we're talking about. Right? Now this doesn't mean everything is differed over. Right? This does not mean that. The basic principle matters, for the most part, are agreed upon. There is no person on the face of earth in Sunni Islam who will come to you and say that there are 6 prayers. No one will say there are 4 prayers. 4 fard prayers, I mean. You can say there are 4 prayers. No one will say that. No one will say Dhuhr is 6 raka'at. These are fundamental things that are agreed upon. No one differs over. People generally disagree, and when I say people, we mean people of knowledge. They generally disagree more or less on the secondary matters and more extended issues. That's generally the concept. Right? So when we talk about the issue of how do we study fiqh, and this is a very difficult question to answer, depends on the person's circumstance and what resources are available, but just a general guideline. Right? The first thing is this. Fiqh is one of, and in general Islamic studies, you cannot study on your own. There's no, you cannot study to a proper extent on your own. You can't just read a book and say, I've learned Islam. The fundamentals of Islam, I mean. Right? You can't say that. You've got to get a guided study. Either you have a teacher for yourself, or someone who's a bit knowledgeable who can help you, guide you through the process. So we say, if you want to learn fiqh, the first thing is to find a teacher who has spent some time studying the matter, studying the issue, who is recognized to be a person of good character, of knowledge and experience. These 3 things. Good character, knowledge and experience. Very important, these things. 3 of them. Right. And then you study with that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن قَبْلِكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِمْ فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, at the end of this verse, He says, actually the entire verse, He says, that we have not sent before you, meaning into any nation, except a man, as a prophet in other words, whom we revealed upon. Therefore, ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. Right? Don't just go to google.com, actually in our case google.ca, and look for fatwas. Go to islamqa.com or what is the other one? Islamqa. Oh, that one, the good one, right? Okay, just jokes. .info or Islam web, or all these things. Just don't go to those websites and start applying those in your life. You need to find a human being who's trustworthy in his knowledge, character, and experience, who you can speak with. That is a person that doesn't have to be physically present with you. He could be just a person you know, have communication with in the least possible way. Communication with. Right? You can't just go to the website and apply this fatwa on yourself. We've got some interesting narrations, and this shows the importance of choosing that person you learn with. Muhammad bin Sirin rahimahullah ta'ala, he says in Sahih Muslim, this is narration from by him. He says, إِنَّ هَذَا الْعِلْمَ دِينٌ فَانظُرُوا عَمَّنْ تَأْخُذُوا دِينَكُمْ. It's very important. He says, this Islam, or this knowledge, in our case, Fiqh of Salah, for example, fiqh in anything, this is your deen. It's an important thing. It's not a joke. It's a very heavy thing. You're accountable for these things. فَانظُرُوا عَمَّنْ تَأْخُذُونَ دِينَكُمْ. So make sure you check rigorously, basically, who you're taking it from. Don't take it from any person who has a beard and who says inshallah and his every pronunciation is very nice. Right? It doesn't matter. Those things don't matter, generally speaking. What matters is his knowledge, his character, and his experience. These three things are very important. We have also a narration by Abdullah ibn Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, Al-isnadu min ad-din, walawla al-isnadu laqala man sha'a ma sha'a. He said, attribution, I'll give you a very rough translation here, attributing knowledge, isnad, meaning having that connection with someone of knowledge, in hadith, in fiqh, in anything, is part of your deen. Meaning, if you want to learn, if you want to study Islam, you've got to have the one-on-one connection with someone to whatever lesser extent you can have. Trustworthiness. And then he says, had it not been that connection, anyone would come and say whatever he would want to say. And we find this problem, right? Anyone comes up and says whatever he likes or she likes. And that causes much more fitna, because that person has no connection with someone, but he thinks he knows or she thinks she knows, and then that's the fitna happens. There are two approaches in studying fiqh in general. There's an approach of studying a madh'hab, for example. You study the Hanafi madh'hab, you study the Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali madh'hab, and you have a teacher for yourself. He takes you to that curriculum, he teaches those things. That's one approach. Right? That's an approach for those people who want to study seriously, rigorously. The other approach is that you have a local shaykh you trust, local imam you trust, for example, Shaykh Naveed, for example, in our case, and other people in town. You speak to that person, he becomes your mufti, basically. If you have any questions, if you have any issue, you speak directly to him, and he becomes your person of point of contact, basically. You study with that person, or you ask questions of that person, or you seek resources from that person to study. That becomes, and I believe that is the most ideal case for the most of us. Right? We need to have connection with our local shuyukh and people of knowledge. That connection is very, very important in our case. Right? Again, Googling your fatwa is not an option. Absolutely not. The second thing, an attitude we need to have in studying fiqh, is that we need to be always in a constant state of learning. Right? We will learn Fiqh of Salah, inshallah ta'ala, perhaps in like in 6 to 8 months, inshallah. It's a long journey. At the end of that, we can't say, I know everything about Salah. I don't know everything about Salah. I'm saying this in front of you, honestly speaking. Right? Always in a state of learning. That attitude. Not just for yourself, also others. Maybe the other person's doing something different. You could say, I just don't know that. Having that flexibility in things. Having that attitude. Right? And number 3, and this is very, very general guidelines, really. It says, I wrote it down. Number 3 is understanding, and this is very important in specific issues that come in this Fiqh of Salah situation. In understanding and focusing on the actual principle. I'll give an example. The most important, the most oft repeated question in Salah is what? What issue gets most questions? Do you think? Come on, bro, something else, man. You know which one, Amar, right? Which one is it? Which one is it, sorry? Sajda Sahu issues, right? You think so? Right? Maybe? Maybe not. Right? So we see some heads nodding. Sajda Sahu issue. Amar Bhai inshallah will discuss that, I think, right?
We'll see.
Inshallah, he will discuss it. And he's a man who can give you a million scenarios about this. From personal experience, obviously. MashaAllah. So Sajda Sahu, for example, is an issue that everyone has a million questions. Right? I missed Fatiha, should I do Sajda Sahu? I missed the surah, should I do Sajda Sahu? I missed this, or I did that. If you ask a million questions, that's fine. But behind those million questions is a principle you understand. If you miss something, or you add something, or you forget, or you're doubtful about something, then you do Sajda Sahu. I'm not giving you the answer here, but it's general guideline. So keep your mind open for it, and inshallah ta'ala, I would suggest everyone who attends these classes that if you're not clear about the principle, then ask about it. What's the principle behind this? So you have a guideline. So if you do any mistake, you know the principle and you can apply in your life. Rather than, okay, I missed the Fatiha, this is what I need to do. But then what if I miss the ruku'? What should I do then? Oh, then I have to go ask the Shaykh the question. Well, let's have a more principled approach to things, right? Have a more technical way of understanding matters. The last discussion, inshallah ta'ala, and perhaps the most useful of this all, the fruit of it all actually, is how to deal with difference of opinion. Very, very quickly, inshallah ta'ala. I've gone beyond the time, but this is a very important discussion we need to have today. How to deal with difference of opinion. Inshallah ta'ala, we mentioned a couple of points as to how to deal with difference of opinion, and we talk about difference of opinion in fiqh here, right? Talk about our context here. We look at the companions, radiallahu anhum, we've already mentioned many examples in which they're different, right? Those are fiqhi matters. Let me give an example in which the companions differed politically. Political issues, right? One group says this and one group says that. And they may have fought one another. But how did they deal with each other regardless of that fight? We have the issue. You can read the history, inshallah ta'ala, hopefully from the right source. When after the death of Uthman radiallahu anh, the fitna that happened, you have Ali radiallahu anh and many companions of his side, and you have Aisha radiallahu anha, Zubair, and Talha radiallahu anh on one side. They love each other, they want to be with each other, but they differ on the particular political issue. Okay? How did they deal with it? Did they hate each other? Did they fight each other? Did they cause trouble for each other? Did they curse each other in the manabir, as some people claim? Did they do this and that? And the answer is absolutely not. We have a narration we find in which one of the sons of Talha radiallahu anhu, again Talha, Zubair, and Ali radiallahu anhu, for example, these companions, they are guaranteed paradise. Right? We know this. From 10 people, it's a guaranteed paradise. Yet they differ on the political issue. And how do they deal with the action? How are their hearts? That's the question. You find the son of Talha radiallahu anhu, I believe his name is Imran, I think, I'm not too sure. He comes to Ali radiallahu anhu, and talks about the issue at hand and all these things what happened. And Ali radiallahu anhu says a very beautiful thing. He says, إِنِّي لَأَرْجُو أَن يَجْعَلَنِي اللَّهُ وَأَبَاكَ مِنَ الَّذِينَ قَالَ اللَّهُ وَنَزَعْنَا مَا فِي صُدُورِهِم مِّن غِلٍّ إِخْوَانًا عَلَى سُرُرٍ مُتَقَابِلِينَ. He says, Ali radiallahu anhu says, to the son of a person who he's different with. He says to his son, I hope and I hope and I'm hopeful that me and your father are those people regarding whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Jannah that they are brothers for one another, of one another, and have nothing against each other in their hearts. You see, these people ended up for some external reasons in fighting one another, but their hearts were their hearts. It's together. If that is the case in big physical fight issues, then what about fiqh issues? Should I hate you? Should I have a problem with you? And the answer is absolutely not. Right? If they didn't have a problem in fighting, again, there were other issues related to it. But yet they had the openness of their heart and acceptance and inclusivity. Then we have no right to hate or even dislike each other because the way he puts his hands, or the way he does his sajda, or the way he says Allahu Akbar, or the way he has 6 takbirs in Ramadan on Eid, or he has 12, or he has 8, is irrelevant for that point about our hearts and togetherness. We have another narration of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala. He says, ما صليت صلاة منذ 40 سنة إلا وأنا أدعو للشافعي. Imam Ahmad, Imam Shafi'i ended up having 2 separate groups, 2 separate thoughts, philosophies in one way, in fiqh and approaches, in some extent. Yet Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, I've never prayed a prayer except I made dua for Shafi'i, my teacher. For 40 years, I've never prayed except I made dua for him. Then his son Abdullah says, أي رجل كان الشافعي حتى تدعو له هذا الدعاء. He said, what type of man was Shafi'i that you made so much dua for him? After every salah, 5 salahs, 5 times, whatever number of days, times 40 years. You can just count the huge number of dua he makes. We don't even make that much dua for ourselves. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, يا بني كان الشافعي كالشمس للدنيا وكالعافية للبدن. He said Imam Shafi'i was like the sun for this earth and for, health and afiyah and goodness for the body of a person, sound body. This is the person we differed with. This is how he says about him. It was said to Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala used to believe that he used to believe that if a person bleeds, his wudu breaks. Okay? But he was asked the question, would you pray behind a person who has cupping done, hijama done upon him, blood coming out basically? He said, why would not I pray? Subhanallah, كيف لا أصلي خلف مالك بن أنس وسعيد بن المسيب. He said, how come I can't pray? How come I would not pray behind Imam Malik, the one who holds that opinion? Right? So this is the idea, this is the attitude we see from the companions and from the imams and other people of knowledge. That we can differ respectfully and still be Muslims. There's no problem. Right? Now in terms of the things in mind, what are the things we can approach in our practical life, how to deal with differences of opinion? Number 1, we said this already a number of times, to realize that differences in fiqh are not problematic as long as, again, what are the 2 conditions mentioned many times? Okay, anyone tell me? Differences in fiqh are not problematic as long as the 2 conditions are fulfilled. Please, someone tell me. I know it's late. Can you tell me? Good. The intention, what is the intention?
That you're trying to please Allah.
Excellent. And number 2? It's a bit more confusing now. Basically, that's number 1 is excellent. This is the most important one. The intention is what? Not to follow your desires. The intention is to achieve what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wants us from us. Number 2 is to approach the matter through the scholastic means, the Quran and the Sunnah. Not us, the scholars. If they've done these 2 things, then I can't come to a person who prays slightly different than me and say to him, you are this person, you're that person. That's fine. That is a fine issue. Number 2, respect the scholars who present their views. One could say, I don't want to fight with that person, but may not have respect. He might disrespectfully behave with that person or disrespectfully behave with that scholar. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, in Muslim Ahmad, this is a Sahih hadith, he says, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يُجِلَّ كَبِيرَنَا وَيَرْحَمْ صَغِيرَنَا وَيَعْرِفْ لِعُلَمَائِنَا حَقَّهُ. The Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith, there's authentic hadith, he is not from amongst us who does not honor the older people amongst us, the senior citizen, if you would say, or have mercy and compassion with the young ones. Or number 3, who does not know the how to respect or how do you translate that? يَعْرِفْ لِعُلَمَائِنَا حَقَّهُ. Like, know the rights of the scholar, respect the scholar. Right, that's the idea. Number 3, when we look at these issues, I can't come up and say to the other person, you are sinful or you're a kafir. Because we agree on this point, the 2 conditions are fulfilled. The intention is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the means that I've taken are the means that are taken by the companions, the Prophet ﷺ, all those things in mind. So I can't come to say to you, you're sinful. It is as if Abu Bakr radiallahu anh is walking down the street. he sees someone doing the opposite thing, as long as disagreement is approachable or allowed, he says to him, you're sinful. We never find that attitude. We never find that attitude in the companions. That's what the Prophet ﷺ says, Sahih Bukhari, إِذَا حَكَمَ الْحَاكِمُ فَاجْتَهَدْ ثُمَّ أَصَابَ فَلَهُ أَجْرَانِ وَإِذَا حَكَمَ فَاجْتَهَدْ ثُمَّ أَخْطَأَ فَلَهُ أَجْرٌ. The Prophet ﷺ says, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says, if a person of leadership and knowledge, in our case, let's make it very simple, personal knowledge, and our shuyukh and our ulama, they do ijtihad, and they are right in the ijtihad, then they get 2 rewards. Right? That's the hadith. Yeah. And if he is incorrect and he is mistaken, he gets 1 reward. And if you are following an opinion of a mujtahid, and he will be getting the reward, how can I come and say to you wrong? Well, not wrong. How can I come and say to you sinful? That is so wrong. To claim that requires a lot of audacity, a lot of kibr in one's mind. To claim that one person is sinful. Number 4, when we discuss these matters with one another, we need to be respectful. Right? Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he has a famous statement, Allahu alam how authentic this is. He says, قَوْلِي صَوَابٌ يَحْتَمِلُ الْخَطَأ وَقَوْلِ الْمُخَالِفِ خَطَأٌ يَحْتَمِلُ الصَّوَابِ. That my opinion, I believe it to be correct, with the probability that the opinion of my opponent, or the one who differs with me, to be right. Right? Is that what it says? Yeah. And so this is the attitude. This is the attitude he has. That I think I'm right, and that's confidence. But I think I could potentially be wrong. Like, I'm open to that idea. If you can discuss with me, debate with me, I'm open to the idea that I could be wrong. So that is the attitude we find in that time. We have a narration of Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah ta'ala. He says, إِذَا رَأَيْتَ الرَّجُلَ يَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلٍ قَدْ اخْتُلِفَ فِيهِ وَأَنْتَ تَرَى غَيْرَهُ فَلَا تَنْهَهُ. General principle. Right? If you see a person, he does something, and an issue there's difference about, then don't tell him you're wrong. Then don't tell him that you are doing something wrong. That is the idea here. The last point, inshallah ta'ala, these differences should not ever prevent us from doing good together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. If you believe that you need to look for your own moon in Calgary, right? If you believe you have to go outside the city and look for your own moon for Ramadan, right? Everyone understand what I'm saying, right? For Ramadan purposes or Eid purposes. But this brother believes otherwise. Does it mean you can't work together in anything else? We're not talking about this specific issue here, by the way. Forget the conclusion. Can we still not be brothers and sisters? Absolutely yes. Right? This is the idea. The companions, again, I want to put your mind back there. Ali radiallahu anhu in his army. Talha radiallahu anhu in his army. The armies fought. Yet each of them love each other. But we can't love each other because he believes, at one point, someone believes that you have to look for your own moon, and the other believes you have to follow California, the third believes you've got to follow Saudi Arabia. Is this worth the fight? On the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us, Munib, why did you have issues with such and such person? And I say, Allah is because he believed that global moon sighting is allowed. How shameful that sounds. Really, how shameful does that sound? Right? So these issues are not there to cause problems. This is where maturity comes in, and wisdom. That we can differ amongst the principles and still be brothers and sisters. Right? Why do we have to cause more problem? So this is literally speaking, the summary of what I've prepared. And this is the summary of these things. I know I've gone beyond the time by 14 minutes. This is a long time. Inshallah ta'ala, this will not happen again. But this is a difficult topic. So that is the conclusion of the actual session. If you have any questions, inshallah ta'ala, they can be entertained as long as they are on topic. Right? So please, any questions from the brothers or the sisters side? Question from my mother, maybe? She will never have a question from me. Okay. So anyone needs clarification or anything? Yes, brother. What the name? What's your name, brother?
My name is Khalid.
Khalid?
Khalid.
Okay, Munib. Yes.
I just thought putting my hands
Oh my goodness. Please with me. I was going to get, for 1 millisecond, I said, how come you asked that question? Well, that's a good one. Okay, I won't answer. Okay, anyone has a question, any concern, anything to add, anything to not add, anything I said wrong maybe? Anyone, Shaykh Nabil, please? Public, basically.
I actually have a question for you.
Oh my goodness. Shouldn't have said that.
One of the things I'd like you to expand, first of all, Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate the lecture that you gave. May Allah bless you and accept it from you. My question is, the two conditions that you've given, that it has to be a person has to be sincere, and then number two, they have to follow this tradition. My contention with both of them, one is not directly achievable, is to gauge people's sincerity, and number two is the vagueness of the concept of a following tradition.
Yeah.
Even that is open to so much interpretation.
Sure.
So, in an issue like the moon sighting issue that you're given,
Yes.
clearly there's valid opinion and invalid opinions, but gauging sincerity, like, well, what does that look like in this situation? So first of all, I'd like you to clarify the two conditions even further if you can.
Sure.
And number two, try to apply those two conditions to something like moon sighting and a practical situation, like what should people do in that situation? Or one masjid is doing this, the other masjid is doing that. What should they do in that situation, practically speaking?
Okay, let's make it more even generic. Let's make life more easier for myself and make it more generic. Let's talk about the principle here. Okay? You're saying, number one, you said, how can we gauge someone's sincerity?
Correct.
That's an important question. I can't tell you sincere or not. But the idea is what? How do we gauge an idea of person's sincerity? Is that it goes back to the idea that you have experience with that person, you know that person, and you know from your interaction that that person does what he does, intending goodness and intending to stick to the general concept of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And you know that he is not saying this just because he wants to oppose you. So that's the idea. Obviously you can't understand the depth of the sincerity. But that's just a human level of understanding. Whether or not, for example, this brother, or this sheikh who's saying this thing, is he saying this because, and this is my job to ask him, in a polite, in a correct manner, to ask that person, Shaykh, how come you're coming up with this conclusion, whereas such and such people are doing this and that? If you feel, and this is again subjective, this is where level of subjectivity, the spectrum of subjectivity is open here, right? How do you understand that? This is the way I tell myself. Wallahu a'lam, is that you know that person. If you don't know that person, you will never know how sincere that person is, in the least. But if you know that person to an extent, and you have conversations with him, then you get the idea that this person is not intending to just cause chaos in the people, or push his opinion, right? Pushing his opinion. He's trying to push an opinion which he feels is closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and beneficial to the people. That is how I would understand. Allah, I know still a lot of cloudiness is around this issue, but this is how I would think of it. Now if you talk about this particular issue of the moon sighting issue.
Actually, the second point
Please.
in terms of this tradition
Yes.
that people need to follow.
Yes.
A word that I would like to use is as a sound methodology
Absolutely.
as opposed to an unsound methodology.
Exactly.
So the guidelines that you generally put out there, that if it's something that's found in the four madh'hab or it's found as a valid opinion amongst our predecessors, then we consider that
Exactly.
sound methodology.
Absolutely.
Whereas something that is purely rational and separates itself from textual evidence,
Exactly.
that we would consider unsound methodology. So I think it's very important to bring those concepts back, that our scholars, inshallah, for the most part, were sincere, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them that repute. And in terms of the methodology, their ultimate goal was to interpret the textual evidence to the best of their ability.
Exactly.
So it always has to follow that sound methodology.
Exactly. Right. What he said, I was going to say sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sorry. I'm so used to sorry. What the Shaykh sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you can say it, right? Anyways, that's a different issue. What the Shaykh said is actually correct. Absolutely correct. I should have said it more clearly. That as long as we find a particular Shaykh's opinion, it's not about the conclusion always. It's about how he came to the conclusion, right? You've got many different people who can come up with the same conclusion using different means. But is the conclusion that always matters? And the answer is yes and no. But what really also matters is how they come up with that conclusion. And that's the principal approach. The scholars coming up with the conclusion, looking at what the Sahaba said, how the understanding of the Quran is, how the understanding of the Sunnah is, how the four Imams. If an opinion is told to you that exists within the four madh'habs as a principle, that is a sign that the person is sticking to a situation, a methodology that's acceptable in our tradition. Is that correct, Shaykh? Thank you for your attentive listening, brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.